So when you get into the cycle of raising funds, then automatically there's a lot of attention. Media tends to look at companies who have raised funds, especially when you come from a matriarchal, highly literate state. You don't have a choice. Education was not, it was not a choice for us. It's a way of living. FIA is an impact fintech, and we are trying to solve, as you said, one of the world's most pressing challenges, which is financial exclusion. I never expected 50 million customers in 10 years that we would be serving them. We create livelihoods. We have 30,000 banking agents, and we provide livelihood to people from marginalized communities.
A lot of things made it possible, and I was just thinking that you and with your team today, you making it possible for so many people. Seema, I have to go on record first and say, and this to everyone, here is an exception and here is an exceptional story, and why all of us in India and everyone in the country has to be invested in the story and celebrate what Seema is doing with FIA, and then we'll shortly hear from her. But what got me very excited and come down here to Sona Road in Gurgaon to sit and have conversation with her is that she is today creating impact and financial inclusion for 52 million people in our country. It's the first fintech I know which is bootstrapped and profitable. And she's done it all by herself and with a very commendable team that you've built. Seema, tell us about FIA, and let's begin with the FIA story.
FIA is an impact fintech, and we are trying to solve, as you said, one of the world's most pressing challenges, which is financial exclusion. So when I was a student in MIT, I was reading this article, and it struck me that one line just struck me, which is half the world is unbanked, and out of that 800 million are in South Asia. So just a sheer opportunity, and the problem just presented itself, and that's when I decided I'll start working on it. Now, it was adjudged runners-up in the MIT 100K entrepreneurship contest, and I said, okay, wow, that gave me the confidence to...
When was that?
That was in 2010, and so that gave me the confidence to come back to India in 2012 and start FIA. Now, so you could say that FIA is a culmination of my desire for social inclusivity, because I'm an army child and I've lived in some of the most backward places in the country where I've seen great inequities. Then the freedom to actually experiment with cutting edge technology like artificial intelligence, and then combining it all with my love for travel. So I've been to about 350 districts, all states, all union territories in the country.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think that is that. And when we came in, we realized that deep market failures, poor infrastructure, very poor infrastructure, very low resource, we work in essentially resource poor settings, and corporate governance is not so strong for social enterprises. And it was also characterized by long break-evens, right? For companies who came in, we're taking 10 years, 12 years to actually break even. And that's when we decided that our mantra is we're going to be sustainable from year one. Now, we were fortunate, we signed up State Bank of India, which is the largest public sector bank, as our first client, and so that kind of gave us the scale. Second, we realized that most competition was around urban geographies, concentrated and working with a few partners. And we decided that, okay, we will go into the interiors of India, not by choice. Our clients told us, do rural and then we will give you the profitable urban centers. So we had no choice but go to rural India. And that's when we realized that it was tough, but the opportunity was there because people were not banked, there's no competition. And so that gave us a scale to actually remain sustainable year on year. Of course, early stages was tough, and grants from World Bank and the Millennium Alliance Consortium, which is a group of US aid, DFID, the UK government and the Indian government. So that in 2014 helped us remain bootstrapped and profitable since inception. If it wasn't for the grants, we would have definitely looked for funding early on, because we were growing rapidly, and yes, cash was always short.
You know, at a base level, to people who wouldn't understand, कैसे होता है? Like what do you do and who are business correspondents and why it is so important?
Yeah. So the business correspondent term was actually coined, I would say, by the RBI during 2006 when they came out with a policy in order to deepen financial inclusion in India. So they allowed, so our business model is the RBI has given permission to banks to tie up with private players to set up banking outlets on their behalf. Now these outlets are manned by local youth, and the complete infrastructure of a laptop, a biometric device and a printer is provided at the center. We provide capacity building support to the agent. Now the technology which rests at the center is a bank's technology, which is a financial inclusion technology which is connected directly to the core banking technology of the bank. An unbanked customer can walk into the center, open a bank account on a real-time basis, and then deposit money, withdraw money and do a range of transactions, including transferring money to all bank accounts across, availing the government subsidies, getting direct benefit transfers into their accounts and so on. So almost about 36 to 40 kind of services are available at a banking center. Now where we come in, one, we provide the distribution reach. Two, we have built a layer of technology over the bank's technology in order to help us predict, make our systems more predictive, real time and risk optimized. So when you're working in very low resource poor settings, sitting here in my Gurgaon office, my team can actually predict whether an agent of ours is working, whether agent is doing transactions as per his performance, he's performing as required, or he's trying to commit fraud. So that's the level, so that's the edge of FIA, and we have done it using both traditional IT technology as well as using artificial intelligence. So that is the one section of our model, which is we set up banking outlets on behalf of banks in remote areas, and which acts as an extension counter of the bank branch.
Yeah.
And what we have realized now is also that people have gone beyond just basic banking and bank accounts, and they're looking for more products. And so we are creating the world's largest, hopefully, neobank for the world's poor. So our target segment is very clear. It's the underserved and the underbanked people.
Fintech has got so much of attention, and of course we have so many unicorns, and it's rightfully it has created a lot of buzz. You've been under the radar, and you've done this for 10 years, and you have actually reached 52 million people, and 52% of your user base are women. Tell me, what has this building meant?
So one is, I think we are largely under the radar because we didn't have to raise funds, right? So when you get into the cycle of raising funds, then automatically there's a lot of attention. Media tends to look at companies who have raised funds rather than companies who have not, and that's a constant point that I bring it to people in the media when I speak to, that you should also focus on companies who are bootstrapped and not really not after the unicorn status, right? So I think the whole journey, if I look at it, I never expected 50 million customers in 10 years that we would be serving them. When I was building the Excel models, we used to say an average of about 500 customers if an agent has. That was awesome. So we would have 100 customers, 200 and 500. And then finally we end up with agents who have as high as 25,000 to 50,000 customers.
Wow.
Right? So they are 4 times some of the rural bank branches from a customer base standpoint. So I think that the sheer transformation, the number that we are actually serving 50 million customers. So that is that kind of keeps you going. Second is that when you go back to the villages, we create livelihoods. We have 30,000 banking agents, and we provide livelihood to people from marginalized communities. So I'm very proud of the fact that I have centers in Uri, Kargil, Kedarnath, Kutch to Kanyakumari, and a person there is able to support his or her family with dignity and not migrate to urban India in search of a blue-collar job.
You've created employment for 30,000 people in small towns and villages of India.
Yes.
That is phenomenal. That is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Tell us the impact you see. Tell us about some of the transformation you see at ground level.
I can give you an example of Manas Ghosh, right? So he was, so the 2 examples which come to my mind are both from West Bengal. So yeah, I can give you an example of Poonam Gupta here as well. So Manas Ghosh is an educated youth. He was an history graduate and he was doing, he was a dairy farmer. And he also had a small shop, stationery shop running in his village in Bardwan, right? Now we appointed him as a banking agent. So the biggest motivation factor, or he says that, my life has actually been transformed, because I as a youth never thought that I would actually be providing banking services to my community and serving the people there. So that's the kind of transformation which has happened. He says, now I feel that my degree which I have and the computer training which I have taken has been put to good use. And his kids were growing. He expected that he would have to migrate to urban India and search for a job because his expenses has gone up. And now suddenly back in Bardwan, he's earning 25,000 to 30,000 rupees a month.
Wow.
While at the same time, providing, he's doing a service. And the job satisfaction that I see in him and the pride with which he speaks about, the job, that's phenomenal, right? Plus, earlier when we went, he was staying in a single house. Now he has got a double-storied house, right? A pakka house. He had earlier about 4 cows. With this, he has moved to, he's got about 10 to 15 cows. You see a doubling of a dairy farmer's income there itself. Plus, he has built assets. He's got a motorbike. He was a very thin gentleman. And now when you see him, he's quite healthy. And earlier he used to go in a cycle and now he's moved to a motorbike. So I think that's the kind of transformation.
That's real transformation.
Yeah. Here in Ghaziabad, I would love you to go and visit Poonam Gupta. She was running a beauty salon earlier. And now she actually, so we appointed her as a banking agent. So we had to first convince her husband. Her husband took a center in his name, realized, yes, this is a meaningful business, and then decided to open for his wife as well. So since the husband had already a job, so it makes sense, the wife running the center. Now what we have seen is that her confidence level is dramatically shot up, right? She's so confident. She said earlier, she's also a double graduate, a double MA, right? And then you find that she was opening a beauty salon because she wanted to keep herself occupied. Very enterprising lady. And now it's being put to good use, right? So she has close to, again, 40,000 customers.
Wow.
And a lot of women. Why? Because you have a woman running the center means you will have more inclusion of women. And women also tend to be more inclusive in nature. So we find a lot more of the elderly, have opened their accounts there. Now I've heard that she's standing for the local ward elections.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Of course, we'd love to meet Poonam Gupta.
Yeah, Poonam Gupta. So it is phenomenal, the transformation that we have seen in her, right? From you could call her almost a housewife to now the big entrepreneur that you've seen.
Was it also a conscious decision when you were starting that, I will not raise capital?
No, it was not the case. So we realized that, I had to come and start because State Bank of India got closed. And so then we put in the investment and then realized that we have to just start working on the execution. Execution was taking away a lot of our time. At the same time, we were just breaking even month to month. It was just a bare existence. Luckily for us, we applied for the World Bank grant and that came through. And we had spread ourselves thin. In the first year, we were in 10 states, running across trying to manage the execution. And we also started Northeast because, the banks told us you have to do Northeast if you want to get urban. And the grant helped us because the grant was for Northeast. Likewise, the Millennium Alliance grant said focus on the most socioeconomically backward districts, and we targeted that. Now you're able to actually put in people using grant money and remain aligned to your mission. So we realized that, what a sustainable model. So I wish all social impact organizations get grants, because then you're not running after fundraising, and by then we reached scale. We had 10 million customers by year 3. So it was like, yes, we are running a sustainable operations. We could have taken it to a much larger scale if we had raised funds, and of course investors bring in their level of expertise, especially people and networks. We could have leveraged that, but we decided that given our strong focus on our social mission, we were not sure whether the investor and us would be aligned. and we decided to take it as far as we could. However, now we would definitely be raising funds because one, we're getting into B2C, which is a neobanking, and
world's largest neobank you're launching,
yeah,
right?
that's a vision. So yeah, first it's always been transform a billion lives. So that's been our vision, and yeah, so that would require, and also we're starting our lending operations. So yes, investments is on the cards now.
You know, lending, I want to understand from you. Lending has been tough, yeah, other than bank, even for banks. Yeah. But we've seen so many lending startups having very difficult times. How do you view the lending business in India?
Yeah, so that's our advantage, because we've done the liability side. We know our customers, we know what their savings are. So we have created a credit invisible model, a alternate credit scoring model for the credit invisible. So what we have realized is that, so when we go and meet customers, 60% of our customers have approached the bank for a loan, and only 2% have been sanctioned. Why? Largely because they're credit invisible. And credit invisible, why? Because you've never taken a loan, or you do not have a credit card. So no credit from a formal financial institution. And these are largely first time borrowers, and who are first time borrowers? Mainly women. So then we said, yes, we have to attack this problem. And what we've realized is, so the advantage that we see for FIA when we start lending is we have already the customer base, right? And two, we know we have agents have strong customer affinity. Two, a lot of the time of the lenders, especially NBFC, MFIs, is spent on collections. But our mechanism is already in place because transactions are happening at our centers. Yeah. So the complete collections will be cashless and driven by our agents, which will give them additional income as well. So we see the existing business actually feeding the new business feeding the existing business by increased transactions because of lending. Hopefully, we have been doing loan origination for our banking partners, and we've had 0 defaults in the last. We do about 700-800 crore every year. That was for pre-pandemic, and yes, we've had 0 defaults. During the pandemic, we put a stop to it, one, because we didn't want to have defaults, right, build up a bad portfolio, and two, our existing business itself was taking so much of a time just sustaining that.
To me, at ground, you are making difference at so many levels. So many levels, and especially coming from Bihar, I can understand, because things have still not changed at so many levels in eastern UP, Bihar, and I'm sure today I was speaking to someone in some rural part of Maharashtra even. So, and then you are in how many districts?
So 712 out of 773 districts.
Wow.
Districts keep expanding.
712 districts, wow.
Earlier it was 710 districts only total, so we were at 690. We were like, wow, we have only 20 more to go. And suddenly the districts get split.
Yeah, but 712, this is phenomenal actually. Seema, tell me that what have been some of the challenges to scale, because these numbers are outstanding, right? And you've done it in a bootstrap manner, staying under the radar. What have been some of the challenges? And you're a single founder.
Yeah.
मतलब सारी चीज़ें जो checklist, सारे non-glamorous checklists हैं to build a very phenomenal glamorous business.
So no, I have a co-founder, right? But we parted ways, in 2014. Wanted to do something separate. So yes. So I did have a co-founder till 2014. So two of us set it up together.
No, but so I also have to say that you are also breaking the norms at so many levels, right? And I can imagine it would not have been easy. But what are some of the key challenges you faced while building?
So I think early on, one of the biggest challenges was risk. Right. So we realized that risk had to be a big focus, because we are working with a highly low literate environment, very resource poor settings, and we are appointing an agent, and we are trusting the money of the poor people in his community with him, right? So we realize that we'll have to get into predictive systems very, very early on and look at innovating around technology. And that, so our third hire was a risk, the head of risk from Max New York Life for the East region. And I think that paid off, that investment in risk so early on in our, when you have very scarce resources, and suddenly on year one itself you have a employee in risk, and the rest of the organization think, we need salespeople, why are you hiring risk? Yeah. But that paid off, right? So consistently over a period of time, we have been able to, using technology, using predictive systems, we have been able to keep our frauds in low literate environment very low. So the first aspect of technology that we built on was enablers and intelligence and risk. And that gave us intelligence, that gave us, made our systems real time, and that gave us a comfort that sitting here in Gurgaon, I know how my centers are performing, right? So we had field agents who would go and audit the centers, but earlier it was a piece of paper, and then we realized he can be filling the paper in his house, right? The questionnaire in his house and submitting it, and then we immediately developed an app. Right, we embedded geotagging. Now we have embedded facial recognition into it. So now we know exactly so when a field auditor goes to audit a center, our risk controls team here knows whether the agent already knows whether the agent is trying to do any compromised transactions. Two, he knows exactly whether the agent is supposed to be where he's supposed to be located. Even if he's sitting 50 meters away, it gets an alarm comes here, an alert comes here. And whether the agent we have appointed is the one who's sitting at the center through facial recognition. So I think that how do you manage risk in a resource poor, discrete distributed settings? And that was the biggest, I think, the challenge, and which would keep me awake at night. Right. The second was, of course, I realized that it involves a lot of travel. So as a woman, I understand safety is the same for both the gender, right? However, it is there's a dimension to it which is different for women. So some places when I go to, I have to be extremely careful, and sometimes that makes me reduce my travel to these places. So for example, Bihar is an example. I'm sorry to say that, where I've always not really felt safe when I go to Bihar, and I have to be careful.
I understand. You don't have to be sorry. We all as a country, we need to feel sorry.
So so some places, even in UP, when you go to interiors, you have to be careful. So I remember when we were setting up our first center, which was in Bagpat, and the first center was set up in Bagpat. So I got a driver here in Haryana, the taxi guy. So he said, I don't care, when you reach there, but you're leaving by 3 o'clock in the evening, because after that I don't trust the place. And so suddenly you find your productivity comes down because of safety reasons, and you are working, you leave at 6 in the morning, but you're back at home at 6 instead of usually 9 or 12 in the night, which was not something you could afford to at that time.
But Seema, ये सब local challenges के होने के बावजूद, you've gone to 712 districts. So and that's why I'm just saying that if we peel the layer of the journey, it would have taken a lot.
I think you just go with the flow, right? So that was it. So there was this lady called Babita Karmakar who was again in West Bengal, right? So I had gone, during my hectic travel, and you have existential crisis every day. And then I'd gone and met her, and I asked her, so she was a banking agent. I said, has this made a difference to your life? And she said, yes. Then the next question was I casually asked her, खाने में कुछ फर्क पड़ा है? And she said, हाँ. So I was like, how has this job made a difference? So she said, one, she was a contract worker, so she didn't have a regular steady job. Now she has got a steady job, and the reason I went to meet her is within 2 weeks suddenly 800 accounts got opened by her, and that was like a record in FIA at that time. And also in my business model we had 200 accounts in a year per agent. And when I went, I realized that she came from very low socioeconomically background. The Gram Panchayat chairman had given her a place in a thatched hut. She was supporting her family. She was a widow, and her husband's family also she was supporting, and so there were 2 kids and 4 total 6 people that she was responsible for. And so the Gram Panchayat had given her a laptop and space in the office to work, and because and she was such a dedicated worker, she was able to open 800 accounts. I went with the intent of finding a fraud and then came back really motivated and inspired, and said, yes, this is what got me into it in the first place. And then she said, now I get steady income because we give her regular income. And so I'm able to actually ensure that my family is fed every day. And sometimes I'm even able to buy fish. So she said that in Bengali, and it was translated to me. And I came back saying, oh my God, my job is beyond accounts and transactions. This is the impact that we actually make to the lives of people. So here we have this common refrain which goes around, and every time an employee joins, we ask them, who pays your salary, right? And so then, so the first time we asked this question, they said, finance pays your salary. We said, no, it's the agent out there. If he does well, we do well. Take care of him and you're taken care of. So for us, that has been the, that is the focus. Ensure that our agents actually are able to earn a sustainable livelihood which grows year on year. And then we definitely will have a sustainable business model.
May I ask you, do you have a competition in this space?
Yes, a lot of competitors.
Really?
Yes. So the industry is very fragmented. So we have close to about 150 players who are operating in this space. We were a late entrant. We started in 2013, as in 12. So 2013 is when our business operations took off. But we are in the top 5 from revenue and I guess from the network outreach that we have.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think the only woman entrepreneur. So I might be wrong there. So I've not really spoken to all the 150. So, but yes.
Wow.
I don't see many women in the meeting, but I think which would be the same for you as well.
I think that also makes it interesting. In terms of building the team, tell me, because it would also have been not easy, right? Because you were not out there. How did you go about building the team?
Yeah, so it was not easy actually, especially when we realized that we needed to have a course set up here in the office. So we had a lot of false starts. However, employees who would come in not committed, they had to be very committed to the social cause. So we started looking for employees who had high levels of social intrinsic motivation, because you're working in a startup environment, which means they need to take the initiative on their own, because all of us are so busy and drive things on their own. And so the references, of course, for the initial set of leaders to drive the organization. We went through references, multiple. So we would not settle for a candidate unless we are satisfied as a lot. We also had a very consensus building process in the organization where all the key stakeholders who's going to work with that person interviews the person. And unless all of us are satisfied, we don't take the person. So our recruitment time it takes a long time, but I think in the end it's worth it, because it's an investment. It's a very expensive investment for us and the person. Also, even for the person, because he's betting his career with a startup. I'm very happy actually to say that we have got some real domain experts in our field, who are known and acknowledged for the work in financial inclusion, especially in the area of risk operations. I've seen people who have joined the organization as graduates, undergrads, studied with FIA. We would give them the opportunity and go on to lead verticals in the organization, right? So till about last year, our attrition percentage was 2% for the year, annualized basis. This year, of course, with the pandemic, and we realized there's a need to bring in more layers of people. We have added different layers of people in the organization, especially with neo-banking. And so the attrition has gone up to about 13%, but which we are okay with, which we would not have been in the past. But so yes, so I think young people, committed people. I think the fintech space is too broad, right? Our ultimate vision is that so that would get the banks worried also. Is of an financially self-reliant or Atmanirbhar woman, Indian, right, who just through a phone is able to manage her financial life on her own. So I think if we reach to that level of technology, right, while at the same time knowing that you deal in a very high-tech environment, and translating that onto high-tech, make your application so intuitive that even a poorly educated person can actually invest in mutual funds, right, and meet his life goals, protect his family, right, get loans on tap. Then I think we are there, and I think that's the evolution that eventually we should all go towards.
So there have been these conversations whenever there is a sort of a recession or downturn or slowdown in the startup, and I've seen this in the last 12-14 years, is that we always start saying that, oh, India's paying market, real market is, would be 60 million people, 40 million people, 80 million. So the number varies between 40 to 80 million. You are today not looking at those million, because your customer is somewhere at the bottom, right? What do you have to say about the potential of the Indian market?
Yeah, so I think 1.4 billion Indians now, right? 1.36 or 1.38 billion. Everyone is a potential, right, for us. Yeah. So we can't. So I in FIA stands for inclusivity. So we were very deliberate. They asked why not integrity. So I said that's a foundation on which FIA rests, and there's no compromise on that. But I stands for inclusivity. So we have to include all Indians. So even if it is at the bottom of the pyramid,
and you see the potential to pay.
The potential to pay maybe not there for all of the Indians. So even when we look at a neobank, when we look at the bottom of the pyramid, we can't really go to the bottom and then start there. We have to first start skimming the top and the middle before you build a sustainable model that you can reach the real bottom. So when we started off in 2012. They gave us Purulia, and I called my dad and he said, oh, the Armstrong case, right? So Mao's infiltrated. He said, where are you going? What are you doing? Right? But when we reached it, we realized that nobody is banked. So that itself is an opportunity, and yes, people have money, right? Then, and even if people don't have money, I think bank account is just a basic hygiene, right? It's a fundamental right, right, for every individual, and you need to provide that. I think if you go with that mindset that it is for all, not just all Indians, all unbanked across the world. Half the world is unbanked. I think we'll be able to create opportunity even from the bottom of the pyramid. Of course, you would have to subsidize some of it with the top segment, but that's a constant evolution.
But what I also hear you saying is that there is a potential which is beyond the 60, 80, 100 million people in the country.
So we don't look at 80 million. So we say that 400 million Indians are routinely excluded by banks and fintechs, right? And there's a range, So a range of products which can be offered to all of them. And you have 1 billion banked, but they have just a basic banking account right now. Such a lot of opportunity for loans, investments, insurance. Maybe not all for all, right? But everyone will fit in somewhere. That's the target, include all.
If you could take me through your journey, you as a person from your childhood, your background you come from, we'd love to know about you, because somewhere the journeys and the upbringings that we have shapes us what we end up doing.
So I'm from Kerala, so I have 2 sisters. My dad is an army officer, and my mom is a chief engineer of Kerala Water Authority. She retired. So I think in our family, especially when you come from a matriarchal, highly literate state, you don't have a choice. Education was not it was not a choice for us. It's a way of living, continuously evolve. And there was never a question. So I did my BTech in engineering, and my first job was with BPL Mobile, where the first phone call was launched in Kerala. So I was actually handling that call, and the sheer excitement, we were moving from room to room, hello, can you hear me, kind of. So from a landline suddenly going into mobility. So that's when that, the transformation possibility with telecom. Even though I still remember it was 16 rupees 80 paise per minute at that time. And even incoming and outgoing. And to now what telecom is, how it is democratized, just communication. So I think that's the base background, a family of women who just worked. And
your sisters also are?
My sisters are doctors. So
both of them?
Yeah, both of them are doctors.
In Kerala?
No, so one is in Pondicherry, Jipma, and the other is in Baran. So hemat oncologist, and the other is a radiation oncologist. So, but the entire family are and we had a lot of women in the family, like all Kerala gender ratio. And all worked, all studied. So I think so that education just continuous learning. They wouldn't even call it degrees. They said you have to keep upskilling yourself. I think that was a way of living for all of us. And because of the army background, I've lived in some really backward districts in the country, and I've seen the inequities very closely. And the sheer shock of coming from Kerala and witnessing that, child marriages, and my mother getting worried and crying, saying, how can you get your children married off at such a young age? And then would point to us. So that's when I think the desire to actually do something on the social field, it kind of got ingrained in me. Joined, did the traditional work, did my MBA from XLRI, worked in consulting, went to the US, again doing a regular job, and then suddenly MIT clicked, and there I went and I realized, I said, I was very clear I wanted to work for either a foundation or do something on the social enterprise side. What I didn't know, and I think it just fell in place. And they had a great program, the entrepreneurship contest, because it took, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur, but took me through an evolution process of 6 months where you go through various, you give assign mentors, and then the idea, suddenly you see the idea actually transforming itself into a company. And never expected that would come runners up some 300 brilliant ideas. So I said, okay, possible, right? So then, but then things fell in place, because when we came back, the reason I would say, FIA was sustainable is not because of me, or it is just that the policy, we came at the right time. RBI had experimented it for 6 years and then figured out what they want to do with it. So they set the policy right. Banks decided they were going to work on the program. And then you had the new government coming in and saying, yes, financial inclusion, Jan Dhan, is going to be the flagship program of the government for the next, few years. So that policy, the measures that really aided our industry, and that's why we rescaled. I think it's just a sheer timing more than anything else.
I think you are just being very humble. I'm sure it would be for many people, but you made this happen. And I was just thinking when you said that a lot of things made it possible, and I was just thinking that you and with your team today, you making it possible for so many people. Right? And I'm saying because you come from the literate state, I come from Bihar. So I understand the impact of what it means at a ground level, what you're doing. Come word nahi bolungi, fantastic, ye sab nahi bolungi, but this is very inspiring, Seema, and we look forward to a very phenomenal journey, and because to me this is nation building. That's what you're doing, right? Because financial inclusion remains a word in the big cities, but you go down, what does it mean? And that's why I was just saying it's heartening to hear that you traveled and started with the Maoist district. So all the very best, and we look forward also to cover all these impact stories through you.